Art in the Vatican by Aaron Conrad. Covering an area of approximately 110 acres, and with a population of only 882 people, Vatican City is the smallest independent state in the world. Its history has spanned centuries and is the home of some of the most famous art pieces of all times. From its statues and fountains to its cathedrals and tombs, the Vatican is a vault of treasures, making it one of the most influential places in the world, both for religious and art history purposes. Vatican City is set entirely within the city of Rome and is surrounded by a walled enclave. It became its own sovereign state in 1929 as a result from a signed treaty between Prime Minister Mussolini and the Cardinal Secretary of State Gaspari. However, the history of Vatican City dates back to the 6th century during the reign of Constantine, with the construction of St. Peter's Basilica. Years later, Pope Symmachus expanded its coverage with the construction of a palace near the basilica. With the influence of Christianity in the area, popes ruled parts of Italy and called Vatican home. Their love of art was obvious with the collection of various art pieces that eventually were housed in the numerous museums and galleries that are within the Vatican City walls. The 1860s and 70s marked the struggle for Italian unification. The King of Italy seized the Palazzo Cornali, or Papal Palace, turning it instead into the Royal Palace, forcing the papacy into the Vatican Palace in 1871. The popes refused to leave the confines of the Vatican and chose not to recognize the king's rule. Ultimately, the formation of Vatican City was due to the Franco-Parisian War, in which France defeated Germany, leading to the annexation of Papal States to the newly unified Italy. The Lateran Treaty was signed in 1929 and marked Vatican City as an independent state and reaffirmed Catholicism in Italy. During the time of Emperor Nero, the land now occupied by St. Peter's was a chariot race stadium which hosted the execution and torture of many Christians. One of those Christians was the leader of the Christian community, St. Peter the Apostle. Upset by St. Peter's preaching and converting his people to Christianity, Nero crucified St. Peter in the stadium in the location where St. Joseph's altar stands today. St. Peter was buried outside the stadium, and his tomb is now located 20 feet under the current basilica. In 313, under the rule of Emperor Constantine, the Christians gained their freedom, and construction of the basilica was ordered over the tomb of St. Peter to honor the Prince of the Apostles. Because of the Christians' need to worship, Constantine ordered the construction of many large basilicas throughout the area. In the mid-15th century, Pope Nicholas V decided that the structure needed to be rebuilt and commissioned architect Bernardo Rossellino to start adding to the old church. However, the idea was shortly abandoned. In 1506, Pope Julius II ordered the replacement of the basilica with a more elaborate structure. Some of the most notable artists of all times were called to take part in this project. Bramante, San Gallo, Raphael, Michelangelo, Maderno, Del Porta, Bernini, and Fontaine were some of the most notable contributors. In 1546, Michelangelo was charged with undertaking the building of the current basilica. He designed the dome, which was not a hemisphere, but instead a parabola, which is defined as a curved form by the intersection of a cone with a plane parallel to its side. Michelangelo died in 1564, and at the time of his death, the dome was finished only as far as the drum. Architect Giamacco del Porta and the assistance of Domenico Fontana vaulted the dome between 1585 and 1590. Fontana built the lantern in 1591 and placed the ball in 1593. In the very early 1600s, Pope Paul V decided to enlarge the Greek cross design and commissioned architect Maderno to pull down the front wall of Michelangelo's building and extend the eastern end of the basilica by 116 yards. That was completed in 1626, and in the following 30 years, Bernini added the colonnade. Built from 1608 to 1614, the grand facade of St. Peter's Basilica was designed by Carlo Maderno and is topped by 13 statues of travertine. From left, the statues represent Thaddeus, Matthew, Philip, Thomas, James the Elder, John the Baptist, Christ the Redeemer in the center, Andrew, John the Evangelist, James the Younger, Bartholomew, Simon, and Matthias. St. Peter's statue in this set is inside. There are 5 bronze doors leading to the entrance of the basilica, the smallest being the most well-known, the Holy Door, created by Vico Consorti in 1950. It is sealed on the inside and opened only during the holy years or jubilee years. Above the central gateway is the mosaic by Giotto, the gospel scene of Peter faltering as he walks on the waters of the Sea of Galilee, while beyond the glass door at the northern end is Bernini's horseback sculpture of the Emperor Constantine. The interior of St. Peter's Basilica is quite impressive and is one of the church's largest in the world. It covers 5.7 acres and has a capacity of over 60,000 people. Niches that house statues of the 39 saints who founded the religious order separate the nave from the inside aisles. Located to the immediate right of the entrance, you will find Michelangelo's Pietà, which is a sculpture of the Virgin Mary cradling Jesus after his crucifixion. Further inside is the Chapel of the Blessed Sacrament, where the Blessed Sacrament, or consecrated bread and wine, is displayed to those who come to worship. The sacrament is enshrined in a bronze tabernacle crafted by Bernini in 1674. The central focus of the interior is that of Bernini's baldacchino, which is the canopy-like monument that covers the papal altar. Crafted in 1624 to 1633, it is made from 927 tons of dark bronze material removed from the Pantheon's roof and stands 90 feet tall. The 4 great pillars that surround the baldacchino and support the great dome are filled with giant statues that represent the 4 major relics of the basilica. The northwest pier is St. Helena, which is Constantine's mother, holding a large cross representing the relic of the true cross found by the saint in Jerusalem. The northeast pier is St. Longinus, the Roman soldier who thrust a spear in the side of Christ at the crucifixion, converted, and was later martyred. The relic is the spear. Southeast pier is St. Andrew, with his trademark diagonal cross, upon which he was martyred. The relic is Andrew's head, which was returned to the Greek Orthodox Church in 1964. The southwest pier, St. Veronica, with the veil Christ used to wipe his face on the way to the Calvary, leaving his image imprinted on it, representing the relic of Veronica's veil. St. Peter's Square was designed and built by Bernini in 1656 through 1667. In the center of the square stands a 25-foot obelisk, which was brought to Rome in the 1st century to stand in Nero's stadium. 2 magnificent fountains also grace the square, one built by Bernini in 1675 and the other by Merdino in 1613. The square is framed by Bernini's monumental colonnade. Between the obelisk and each fountain is a circular stone that marks the focal point of an ellipse. If you stand on one of these points, the 2 rows columns of the colonnade line up perfectly and appear to be just a single row. 140 statues, all crafted by numerous artists between 1662 and 1703, top the colonnade. The statues immortalize various apostles and founders of the religious orders. Statues of St. Peter and Paul stand near the stairs of the basilica at the front of the square. St. Peter's statue was sculpted by Giuseppe de Febris in 1838 through 1840, while Paul's statue was crafted by Adamo Totolini in 1838. The most popular chapel in Vatican City, the Sistine Chapel, dates back to as early as 1368. However, the most recent version was built between 1473 and 1481 by Giovannino de' Dolci. A masterpiece of Renaissance art, the chapel hosts work not only by Michelangelo, but by Pier Matteo de' Emilia, and other renowned artists also contributed to the many frescoes as well. The Sistine Chapel ceiling was originally painted as a starry sky by de' Emilia, but later transformed by Michelangelo at the request of Pope Julius II. Several of Michelangelo's scenes were inspired by the Book of Genesis, including the iconic creation of Adam, in which the man reaches out for the hand of God. Other paintings depict the prophets of the Bible in Rome, the genealogy of Jesus, and a host of other small details that are worthy of your attention. Taking almost 6 years to complete, Michelangelo's The Last Judgment spans the entire wall behind the altar of the Sistine Chapel, depicting the second coming of Christ in the Apocalypse. The souls of humanity rise and descend to their fate as judged by Christ and his saintly entourage. Located on the second floor of the Pontifical Palace are the 4 rooms known as the Stanza of Raphael, and created by him and his school between 1508 and 1524. The Room of Constantine was designed by Raphael, but created by his pupils due to his death during the creation of the room. The room was used primarily for receptions and ceremonies. The room was dedicated to the Emperor Constantine, who led the Christians to freedom, and characterized 4 events in his life: the vision of the cross, the battle of Constantine against Maxentius, the baptism of Constantine, and the donation of Rome. Contains Raphael's most famous fresco. Besides being the first work executed by the great artist in the Vatican, they mark the beginning of the High Renaissance. The frescoes were painted between 1508 and 1511 and represent the 3 greatest levels of the human spirit: truth, good, and beauty. The disposition of the Holy Sacrament represents supernatural truth, while the School of Athens represents rational truth. Cardinal and the theological virtues and the law illustrate good, while beauty is depicted by Parnassus with Apollo and the Muses. The frescoes of the ceiling are connected with the scenes below them. The allegorical figures of theology, philosophy, justice, and poetry allude in the fact to the faculties of the spirit painted on the corresponding walls. The Room of the Fire in the Borgo was used for meetings of the highest court of the Holy See. The theme focused on the political aspirations of Leo X through encounters with the 2 previous popes of the same name. Crowning of Charlemagne and justification of Leo III depicted Leo III, while Fire in the Borgo and Battle of Ostia encompassed Leo IV. In all of the episodes, the Pope is a portrait of the reigning pontiff Leo X. 6 seated figures of emperors and sovereigns who are protectors of the Church are shown in the monochromes below the paintings. The Room of Heliodorus was designed after Raphael painted the Room of Signacara. It was originally used as a private meeting room for the Pope. Raphael focused on a more political theme for this room and tried to channel historical moments between God and the Church. Faith had been threatened, or the Mass of Bolsena, in the person of its pontiff, the liberation of St. Peter; in its site, the encounter of Leo the Great with Attila; and in its patrimony, the expulsion of Heliodorus from the temple. These 4 episodes depicted from the Old Testament were the work of Raphael, while the other work in the room was painted by Luca Signorelli, Bramantino, Lorenzo Lotto, and Cesare de Sesto. The Vatican is an electric masterpiece of worldly art that tells the story of art history and influences throughout the ages. With so many renowned artists constructing the various buildings and structures, the Vatican itself is a piece of art that remains timeless. From Michelangelo to Bernini, or from Raphael to Modino, so many artists left their mark on an entire country that will remain a museum within itself to honor the treasures it is.